with it.
Hello there, Squirrel here. Today we're going to be actually doing a movie review of the classic film The Great Ziegfeld with William Powell, Myrna Loy, Luise Rainer. The film came out in 1936, but in this particular one, this is part one. So part two will be more about the actual film itself, as far as the different actors that played particular roles in that film. This is more of a breakdown, in a sense, to introduce you to who the Great Ziegfeld actually was in real life a little bit for context. So basically this is part one. So the movie breakdown full, part two. This is more of the intro. So thanks for bearing with me. So the Great Ziegfeld is the telling of a autobiographical story, and this is about Florenz, or Flo, Ziegfeld Jr. Ziegfeld was regarded as one of the stage's most sought-after producers and talent scouts of his time. He did a lot of different productions that over time people remembered, but Ziegfeld Follies is the one that started it all. And these were a mixture of different performers from all different types of fields, like kind of like that vaudevillian era of performers, singers, dancers. The whole package deal is what we refer to it as now. But back then, it was a very big deal. Ziegfeld was a legend in his own time, who had often been called Broadway's greatest showman, and he is best known for his musical show, Showboat, and that is one of the longest-running, quote-unquote, Broadway productions, with the most elaborate sets and every kind of actor, singer, and performer, comedy, drama. It had it all, and it was quite the experience. The costuming in a lot of his shows was extraordinary for its time. People would go just to see the actual set design, not just the music and the performances, but the actual costumes that, many of the actors would be playing. Now, what got him started, though, was his girls. So you had the Ziegfeld Folly girls. They always had those legs. And in the beginning, I think he did get heat a little bit from people, because these were like kind of scantily clad women for that time, and the name of his production for Ziegfeld was the Glorifier of American Girl, and here you go, glorified. But these productions were very well done, and audiences often attended. Every production was a spectacular event, so it would draw in crowds with awe and enthusiasm of what could he do next, and what could be brought to the stage, and what would you have as far as your experiences. And you would see elaborate costumes. You would see performers that you would never have seen, whether that be from here in the United States or abroad, from France or from Belgium, from different countries. And there was always eyes out on the scenes, and it didn't matter where, because oftentimes they would find people working as performers in brothel houses and, red light districts in some cases. But they were extraordinary actors with a lot of different abilities, but we're talking about women for that time. You might actually recognize this particular gal here. This is Josephine Baker, and she's in one of many costumes the Ziegfelds had performed in 1936, well after his passing, but even so, the same type of structure, which we will get more into some of the costuming as we get into this film. But over the course of his career, he would seek out talent, and some of the most extraordinary talent he did actually discover, whether it was through his eyes, ears, or just word of mouth. And a lot of these popular talents went on to the silver screen, acting, stage, everything. And his wife, and you see here in this 1936, I guess it would be program, playbill, went on to continue the Ziegfeld Follies. And in this particular one, we see Bob Hope in there. We also see Josephine Baker in here, and so there are other, like Eve Arden, Harriet Proctor. These were all different types of actors that did go on to do other performances, whether big or small. And Bob Hope, as we know, is a recognizable name. Josephine Baker was a recognizable name. But this is 1936, so we have to go travel a little bit back in time, and I did want to highlight some of the actors he discovered. Now, Josephine Baker did come in a little later after his death, but she had been working overseas in Paris and in different avenues in Harlem, and it made her career into something so much larger in a time where it was beyond difficult as an African American, especially as a female, to get in the door without, unfortunately, being put in compromising situations or even not even having that opportunity. But she was a Ziegfeld Folly girl, and she was an extraordinary performer, singer, actress, all the things. I think she could have even been larger than life had she been given the proper opportunities. Also on the list of discoveries for him was Barbara Stanwyck. She went on to do many movies, highly recognized face and name, as a very beautiful girl. But she had multi-talented, and I think the thing that Ziegfeld did that not a lot of producers did at that time, and even now you could argue, is that he would look, yes, at the vanity of it, because people want to be appealed to the performer through their beauty, like all of us are still vain. Humans are vain by nature. But he also looked deeper into the Ziegfeld girls. So when he was recruiting, thousands upon thousands of ladies would show up just to audition or at least see him or have that interaction with Ziegfeld. And out of like thousands, he would only pick maybe 97 girls. And out of that 97, he thinned them out because he was looking for personality, charisma, humor, talent, multi-talent, an all-American in his mind, an all-American girl in so many facets that she wouldn't just be, oh, you're just a pretty face, and you're going to be basically, pigeonholed into just being a model on a stage. So we have Barbara Stanwyck was one of the discoveries he made along with Josephine Baker, even though she did take off more so after his passing, and she had different things. But to go to the Ziegfeld Follies was like a huge jump to a Broadway stage and having more opportunities brought your way. Also, a lot of musical talents came through there. I'm just going to name a couple. One is, this here is Irving Berlin. Now he's considered the greatest songwriter in American history. Numerous projects under his belt. The other, right here, is Oscar Hammerstein II. And this is of Rodgers and Hammerstein, so we're talking White Christmas and so on. He worked on Showboat. He also collaborated on different smaller productions, but Ziegfeld really, this was a huge deal for Hammerstein, or Hammerstein, however you want to pronounce it. Now, this young lady in this photo is Fanny Brice, and you might recognize her name from the 1964 Broadway musical Funny Girl, which is loosely based on Fanny Brice's character in real life. Very colorful, comedic actress, very expressive. If you Google her as an example, look at the images alone. She's very expressive. She's a talented singer and performer, and he actually found her at a red light district type establishment. She was singing and dancing and things like that, but he said, well, at the time she wasn't considered something, quote, attractive enough necessarily for that, but he saw talent in her, an extraordinary talent and humor that I think she's adorable. I think she's a pretty lady, but for that time, not the glamour girl that you would expect of a Ziegfeld Folly girl, right? But anyway, her career took off, and you see her in numerous films throughout her career. Now, this here is a recognizable face, which we will see him again in the next video. This is Roy Bogler, and he went on to The Wizard of Oz to play the Scarecrow. But he was a fantastic, I cannot tell you enough, fantastic dancer, very limber, and you can see why he was chosen to be the Scarecrow. This is Eddie Cantor. We've discussed him. Excuse me. We've discussed Eddie before in a previous video of the 40 Little Mothers movie review. But Eddie Cantor is also a multifaceted vaudevillian who worked with Ziegfeld Follies, specifically Whoopi, where that song, Making Whoopi comes from. He was the singer of that song. Very comedic, almost like Mr. Beanish, for our generation, but also an expressive actor and very versatile. Now, this is Fred Astaire. He also began with Ziegfeld Follies. He had started with his sister and then went on to more independent work. But they had been in the Ziegfeld Follies together, he and his sister, different productions, but he went on to do more on his own. Thus, we have the Fred Astaire that we know and love nowadays as far as classic films. Now, this is Will Rogers, another familiar name, great comedic talent. There's a lot of different things connected with Will Rogers. It could take up another 15 or 20 minutes, but needless to say, a very, very popular comedian, very popular actor, known for Oklahoma and performances in that. Another vaudevillian is Leon Errol. Bob Hope, which a lot of people may recognize Bob Hope immediately. And last but not least is Ruth Etting. She went on to do numerous performances on Broadway and in film. One of those actresses that people remember her name, but they may not remember her face. But she's done a lot of work, especially in the 30s, 20s, 30s, and so on. A lot of stage. But once again, she started as a Ziegfeld girl and then just kind of moved up. And it was interesting. That's how he got a lot of these ladies in the doors. He knew how to cast. He knew how to do it well, and he saw potential even in the ones where others were like, well, they're, she's not pretty enough, or she's not tall enough, or he's not tall enough, or he's too goofy. He gave comedians an opportunity to blossom. Whether or not he cared for the comedians is a whole other topic. But let's go ahead and move on forward. So, upon the release of The Great Ziegfeld, the film in 1936, Ziegfeld had actually already passed away prior in 1934. He was penniless. This was due to his extravagant expenses, poor management of money, okay? But also, he had placed a lot of stocks into the market, so when Black October hit in 1929, he lost about everything, all of his investments. So his wife, Billie Burke, came into the picture and really helped step up to help support him, which is never what he wanted. He had always been a provider for her and their daughter, because he only had one daughter with her. We will get into Billie Burke later on in the second one, because that's a whole spiel. But needless to say, she carried the household through her film work, so she became a recognizable face. We'll touch upon her later on. But this film was a box office smash when it got into the actual box office. And I think a lot of people at the time didn't really have the kind of money to be throwing around. And also the other thing is that despite its long run time of almost 3 hours long for this film, the tickets that were sold in 1936 for this film were obviously going to be higher for their price. And there's numerous examples which we will touch on about, the pricing, maybe $4 to go see this film. But they marketed it really well because you literally did see full performances from the Ziegfeld Follies, which we will see some, screen caps and kind of go over. I wish I could play some of it, but I don't want to risk having, YouTube cops after me for something. It's ridiculous. Anyways, but I cannot tell you enough, how much watching this film was, I wish had been in color. Okay? I think it would have brought a lot of it to life. But at the same time, you almost kind of embrace that silver screen feel to it in some segments. But as far as the performances, I can absolutely see why the audiences loved these productions. But it wasn't just going and running to a theater for a lot of people. It was actually having that full experience of reliving the Ziegfeld and the Follies that maybe they weren't able to attend to, and that's why this film did so tremendously well. Also, the Great Ziegfeld did win 3 Oscars and had 4 nominations. The 3 Oscar wins it received were for Best Picture. This was in 1936. So, Best Picture, Best Actress in a Leading Role was Luise Rainer. Best Dance Direction by Seymour Felix for the song A Pretty Girl Is Like a Melody. Best Director was for nominees. So we're going to get into the nominees now. I apologize. So the 3 Oscar wins, Best Picture, Best Actress, and Best Dance Direction. And then for the nominees, we had Best Director, Best Writing, Original Story, Best Art Direction, and Best Film Editing. So in the next video, though, we'll be going over more of the players in this actual film. So you can kind of get a feel for who was placed in these roles, why certain roles are very intricate and important, because some of the people that were being portrayed in this film were still alive. And we do have that a little bit now, but back then it was just an unusual thing. But then again, Ziegfeld was an unusual man with a very colorful and elaborate and very insightful, I think, visionary, and he was ahead of his time, and he brought Broadway to life where maybe some of the plays weren't doing as well, and Broadway kind of was flustering around a little bit. The vaudeville scene absolutely came to life under Ziegfeld, and I think it introduced comedy and drama and acting and singing and things that you started to see transform the film industry in so many ways. Of why are these films everyone's always singing, and why are people always happy? Because they had come out of the Great Depression and they were still trying to recover. And it's amazing how much I call it the Coliseum of entertainment reflects upon the people and vice versa. So Basically, we'll go over a lot of the players and actors in the next video. You may actually recognize a great deal of them, even if you don't watch a lot of older films. So you'll be like, wait a minute, I did see this guy before, or this woman before, or this is interesting how this is all connected. So I want to thank you very much for sitting with me today and listening to me go over part 1. There will be part 2, so I hope that you'll join me for the part 2 of the Great Ziegfeld review, and we can go from there. So, have a great day.